Hola, ¿qué tal a todos? Bienvenidos a este espacio llamado God Science, Ciencia, Cultura y Teología desde una perspectiva cristiana. Estoy aquí con Steven Dorman. Él tiene su área de estudios en filosofía y actualmente está estudiando un Master Christian Apologetics. Y bueno, vamos a comenzar una serie de preguntas muy sencillas. ¿Qué es la filosofía? ¿Qué opina él en torno a el anti-intelectualismo que se vive en la comunidad cristiana? Y bueno, los invito a que escuchen esta pequeña entrevista. Steven, welcome to God Science. Thanks for coming here with me, having this conversation.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
First of all, you have a degree in philosophy?
Yes, I have a BA, Bachelor's of Arts
Okay.
in Philosophy, and I am currently working on an MA in Apologetics. It should be done this May.
How do you embrace the Christian faith and your particular interest in philosophy?
By God's grace, I was saved at a young age, and I didn't get into philosophy till later on in life when I was in college. I was going through a time of questioning things, thinking real deep about things and the big questions of life, and through talking with some of my professors, eventually found philosophy. And I'm so grateful for that. I've loved it ever since I found it, and it's been a great help to me. In fact, in my study of philosophy, it hasn't turned me into an atheist. Rather, it strengthened my faith in theism. And I'm very grateful for it.
For those who are not familiar with philosophy, Steven, what is the definition of philosophy? What is philosophy?
Well, many philosophers have many different definitions, but the word itself just means the love of wisdom. Philosophy, how I would personally define it, would be the investigation that takes place to find answers to the big questions of life.
So, Steven, why philosophy matters?
Philosophy matters because it really does help us answer those big questions in life. Especially, it helps the Christian too when thinking about such questions. As you learn in philosophy, part of philosophy, there are different branches of philosophy, but one branch is learning logic and how to reason, how to make an argument, how to understand when someone is not making sense, literally. They're being illogical. And so this is very, very helpful for the Christian and obviously for anyone when talking with people, when searching for answers. You want to make sure that what you're learning and the evidence that you have makes sense, it's logical. Sometimes Christians have been called anti-intellectual, or that they just believe what they believe. They've never even searched to see if it's true. They would reject any evidence even if they did. They just blindly believe.
Right.
And I think this is sad. This is not how it should be. Christians should embrace philosophy, embrace reason, embrace the use of logic. In fact, 1 Peter 3:15 says that we should be ready to give everyone an answer as a Christian to any question that's asked of us. And sometimes those questions are deep philosophical ones. And so we should be prepared for those, not just, who Jesus was, or what did he preach, or something like this, or what does the Bible say about this, but we should be prepared for bigger, deeper questions. Does God exist? Is the Bible true? And so forth.
It seems that we're experiencing a scientific revolution right now. Okay, we are at the peak of scientific knowledge, and it seems that science is the absolute queen of truth, right? What do you think about scientism as an answer to everything?
Good question. I would say I don't believe in scientism. I would not hold to that. I think it's false. Of course, it depends on what you believe science is, obviously, but to me, I take scientism to be just the idea that science is the only way, and doing science is the only way that we can come to knowledge of things, or that we can know any truths about the world. That view or definition of scientism is false in my mind. And can be shown to be false. For example, mathematical truths. Things like, you believe 1 + 1 is 2, right? I mean, you believe that's true and you have knowledge that it is. Well, that can't be scientifically proven. That is assumed by science. These mathematical truths and truths in logic are assumed to be true in order to actually do science. Also, things like moral truths. Where has the scientific method shown us that what the Nazis did to the Jews was morally evil? This is something I think that's truths that we know and that we're rational to believe, that's outside of the ability of science to answer. There are things that exist that aren't just material, like physical. Something like numbers, like the actual number 1. Not what you've written on a board, the number 1. That's not what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about the actual number 1. Its essence or nature is not in that on the board. It's abstracted somewhere else.
So, for example, consciousness, right?
Yeah, some philosophers think that thoughts, say like thoughts or feelings, emotions that you have, these aren't something like, if I opened your brain right now and looked inside, and someone stabbed you at the same time, I cannot see the actual feeling you're having, the actual feeling itself.
That's true.
Or I can't see what you're thinking right now. If materialism was true, then I should be able to do this. We could reduce thoughts to something physical that we could see, but that's just not the case. So if these things exist, like thoughts, which I'm pretty sure I'm having a thought right now, that it exists, if it exists in some way, then it seems like it would be non-material.
What about aesthetics?
Is another one. When have we seen science prove that the Mona Lisa is a beautiful painting? I don't remember when, but it is a beautiful painting, and that's the truth, and I know it, even though science has not proven it to me.
Also, one of the aspects of this universe that I found fascinating is the complexity of this biological world. All these patterns that we observe in the universe, to me, it seems like they're pointers to a creator behind this world. What do you think, Steven?
I think that's true. I would agree. When we look at stuff like DNA or the fine-tuning in the universe, these facts can be put into arguments. We call them design arguments, I guess. They're all very similar, but what they do is they all take fact, like some order or complexity in the world, and they argue to God's existence. In other words, or the best explanation for the existence of this order in DNA and the fine-tuning of the universe must be that there's intelligent creator behind it, or it's most likely that this only exists because there's an intelligent creator behind it. So yes, I do think it's rational to conclude from different things in the universe, like fine-tuning and DNA, that intelligent creator exists and is behind it. My favorite argument is the ontological argument. The reason I like this one is it's fascinating to me because this argument tries, and I think succeeds, to show that God exists just from the possibility that God exists. Just if it's possible that God exists, therefore he does exist. And that's what's fascinating to me because I think this goes at first against our normal common sense. If we think, oh, it's possible that aliens exist, oh, it doesn't mean therefore that aliens exist, right? So, but this argument really shows in my mind that if it's possible that God exists, then He does exist. And that's, and this is another reason why I like this argument so much, is it's so powerful. I think it's very powerful because lots of people would admit that, oh, it's possible God exists. But if you've got them to admit that it's possible that God exists, then what they don't know is they should also admit that God exists. And so it's a great argument, but that's why I love it so much.
I became a Christian not because of scientific evidence or objective evidence or this argument or that argument. I became a Christian because I had an experience, again, a subjective experience, but we have millions and millions of people over thousands of years that they claim to have an experience.
Yes, I agree. Let me give you an example. I believe this example has been given before. Say, for instance, you're put on trial and for a crime. Now, you know from your personal subjective experience, you weren't there, you didn't steal, whatever, you're innocent. However, you're in the courtroom and now all this objective evidence starts being put forth, and the jury is well in their right and would be rational to conclude from the evidence that's been presented that you're guilty. Now, but you're not guilty, right? But only you know that.
Okay.
Because you had the experience. It's subjective evidence, right? You know you weren't there. You know you didn't steal it. But even so, there's a mountain of objective evidence against you. And so, what does that show? What I think that shows is Christian can have a subjective experience of God, like it says in Romans 1:20. We have knowledge of God through nature. God has made it evident to us, plain to us. No, we're without excuse. So we can have this subjective evidence and be rational to believe that God exists, even if there's a non-Christian here who's just has all these great arguments, and anyone listening to the conversation would clearly say this non-Christian is winning this argument, their debate, and from this conversation alone, we shouldn't believe in God, that God exists. But it's still true, wouldn't it, in that case, that you could be rational and still believing in God because of what you've personally experienced. Now, let me add one more thing on this topic. Philosopher William Lane Craig has said there's a difference between knowing what you believe is true and showing what you believe is true. You can know what you believe is true, again, through this subjective experience. However, to show that to be true would be different. You can't just give your experience to someone else, say, here you go, unfortunately. But you can present objective evidence, and so there is a distinction there. But it's also true that just from the objective evidence alone, one can come to knowledge of God's existence.
Right.
But it is also true that one can be rational in affirming that God exists just on the basis of the objective evidence alone.
Finally, what books do you recommend for people that are just starting philosophy?
Yes, if someone's getting into philosophy, especially the Christian, there is a book called Philosophy Made Slightly Less Difficult. It's a great book. Discusses the main branches of philosophy and the core concepts that are studied, I think, very well and easy to understand. It's for the layman.
Thank you for having this conversation with me.